If you have one of the discontinued 61RGD Raynor remotes or this Liftmaster 61LM remotes and you're looking for a replacement, then the Stinger 390LM is a good choice. And that's what we're going to take a look at next. Let's get to it. The 61LM and the 61RGD remotes were discontinued a few years ago, but a lot of people still use them and need replacements. So the Stinger 390LM remote acts just like the 61LM and 61RGD remote and programs the same way, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. So if you want to identify what you need as a replacement, first you want to look on the back of your existing remote. Like this is a Liftmaster one. If you look on the back here, it'll have the model number and it should say 61LM. If you have a Raynor one, it'll say 61RGD, and maybe you have a Chamberlain and it'll say 750 CB, or a Master Mechanic, which is a 61MM. If you have any of those remotes, then the Stinger 390 will work as a replacement. Now if you don't have any remotes, then the other way to identify a compatible remote is if you have an external radio receiver, and this would be mounted on the back of the garage door opener. Now you might need to remove a couple screws so you can turn it over, and if you look on the back you'll see a model number of that radio receiver. These radio receivers were compatible with the 61LM remotes, but there's also other remotes that could be programmed to it, but the 61LM was one of the more popular ones. Now these radio receivers could have a model number of 500 RGD, 540 RGD, 545 RGD, 500 LM. I'll just list them all right here. These are all the compatible radio receivers that work with the Stinger 390 remote. Now there's one caveat: if you do have like a 500 model RGD or 500 LM, you're also going to need an existing working remote to program the new remote, and that's because these older 500 RGD and LM radio receivers, if you pop this cover off on the front with a knife, you get inside here and you'll see a program button. Now all the radio receivers like this had program buttons, except this was the first edition that they came out with, and this program button, normally you could erase the codes that are in there, but in this one you can't. So it has a fixed code, and that's why you need an existing remote that works with it to program a new remote. All the other ones though, if you don't have any remotes, then you can just press this learn button to program it. Now you also might have an older garage door opener that's from the late 1980s that has the switches like this that are inside the remote, but they're built into the operator. So that also might be a compatible one. A lot of those operators have been replaced and are no longer around, but there are probably a few still out there and still working, 35-40 years later. So if you have one of those, the new Stinger 390LM remote would be compatible also. Okay, now that you have identified that you have one of the compatible remotes, one of the 61s, or one of the compatible radio receivers, we'll look at how to program a new remote to your operator. And there's two ways that we can go about doing this. The first way is the easiest way, is if you have an existing remote already, then we will match the switches in the new remote to your existing remote. So if you have an existing remote, on the back there will be a cover here. You'll slide that off, and inside you will see 9 switches, and they can be moved to either a plus, a 0, or a minus position. Just take note which position all 9 are in. On this particular remote we have 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 9 in the plus position. All the other ones are in the minus position. So once we note that, we take our new Stinger remote, and you'll just take and slide off the front cover here. Inside you'll also see these 9 switches and your battery. There's a small tab here. You pull that off so your battery is activated. After you do that, take a small screwdriver, or I like to use a knife because it has a small tip on it, and then I'll move these switches inside here to match the ones on my existing remote. So I'll move them in the plus position. 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 9, all into the same positions that I have on my existing remote. Your remote should be programmed properly, and as long as your old remote was working with your receiver, your new remote should now also work with it. And you just take and slide your cover back on there, press and hold the button on your new remote, and your operator should run. If it doesn't run, then go ahead and double check to make sure that you have these in the correct position that matches your old remote, and also make sure that you've pulled this piece of plastic tab out so your battery is active. Now if you don't have any remotes, then you're going to have to go to your radio receiver that you've confirmed is compatible with the Stinger 390 remote, and you go up there, and this cover here, as I showed you earlier, will just pop off with a blade of a knife or a small screwdriver. You just pop that off, and inside you will see what they call the learn button. In this case it's green because this is a 520 RGD radio receiver, and that's the button you use to program your remote. Now you'll take your Stinger remote, you can set those switches in any position you want. I would recommend that you don't switch them to all on or all off, just stagger them, and then go to your radio receiver. You'll press and release that learn button on the radio receiver, then press and hold your new remote button. The LED light next to the learn button will flash and go out. That has now accepted this remote, and you can test it by pressing a remote button, and your operator should run. And now if you add any additional remotes, say you want to add 2 or 3 more remotes, you don't have to go back up to the radio receiver. You'll just get your new remotes and set the switches in them to match the one that you programmed to the receiver. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have a 500 RGD radio receiver like this one, then you'll see a white learn button in there. This learn button is not going to program into the remote, so you'll need to have an existing remote to program a new one with that particular model only. All the other ones you can use the learn button to program the remote. And that's how you identify and program the Stinger 390LM remote. If you're interested in purchasing it, I will leave a link in the description below. If you have any questions, you can email us at youtube@garagedoorzone.com. Hit the like button on your way out. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next one.